Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Cioffi here. It is a Monday, Labor Day, coming up on 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We've had a couple of developments this morning, so I figured I'd jump on real quick and do a live stream with regarding the new tropical storm that has formed, Tropical Storm Gordon. So we're going to get right to it. I'll bring up the radars. I think those are probably the best views at the moment, really, with what's happening. Of course, I have to bring up the wrong radar, so just happen to just bear with me 1 second here. Oh boy, let's try this again. Um, Sometimes it's a little bit hard for me to get going in the morning. So here we go. I think now we got the. Oh, it really isn't working for me today, is it? I can't believe it. I just had it here. Where did it go? Um, I think that's it. There we go. Oh, this is what happens when you these stuff that happens early. Okay, so the radar. This is the Miami radar, and we are seeing, for one thing, a lot of heavy rain coming in from the southeast into South Florida. Most of it is actually at the moment on the east side, beginning to spread over to the west side. The If you notice the arc on the radar echoes that arcing that is going on with the band. So we have banding that is developing here. Based on the surface observations, we are seeing winds of being reported 40 knots in and around parts of the Keys. There is a closed circulation now that is developed. So the Hurricane Center has raised this to a tropical storm with top winds of 45 miles an hour. It seems to be developing faster than models. Models don't seem to be handling this all that well. So it may mean upgrading the strength of this as it moves across the Gulf of Mexico and heads towards the Louisiana Gulf Coast, where we also have tropical storm warnings now in effect for later Tuesday into Tuesday night, as the system is still basically headed in the same direction. That part of the forecast hasn't really changed very much. Here's the look of the radar going further west into the Keys, and again, you can see that banding that is happening. The brighter yellows and browns and some of the reds there, banding up in and around a circulation center that is probably somewhere along the eastern Keys and moving toward the northwest. So this is going to push its way offshore. Tropical storm warnings have been put up for Southwest Florida, mainly south of Naples. They do not include the Keys at this point. I'm not exactly sure. I'm reading from the discussions. I'm just trying to get a gauge of what Miami is thinking and doing here. I'm not sure why they left it out for the Keys, but they know their area much better than I do, obviously. So we have going to have tropical storm conditions across South Florida here for today into the first part of tonight until this system moves offshore. And by the way, one of the other keys to all of this is going to be the National Hurricane Center's plane, the reconnaissance aircraft that is going in there. So once they can sample more data, they probably can make a better determination as to where this is going in the longer haul. Here's the view on the satellite loop this morning, and very definitely an increase in the convection developing. The enhanced cloud tops here, the colder cloud tops just expanding fairly rapidly from the western Bahamas across South Florida. System still seems to be tilted a bit toward the eastern side, which is typical of systems that are, from tropical waves that haven't quite uh, uh, gained full intensity with respect to their structure. They're still in the process, so probably start to see convection increase more on the west side over time, and then move into the Gulf of Mexico, where we do have. You see the clouds out to the west; they're turning anticyclonically. In other words, they're turning in the direction of a high. of an being under the influence of an upper high here, and tropical storms like to get underneath or near upper highs. That creates conditions for them to strengthen somewhat. Gulf water temperatures are very warm, 30 degrees Celsius or higher, and it looks like conditions are going to be favorable for gradual strengthening. It'll be interesting to see what the reconnaissance aircraft finds when it goes in there later today, and how that impacts the forecast and the weather models going forward. Here's a wider view so you can not only see Gordon, but you can also see Florence, which is now approaching 40 degrees west and is still south of 20 degrees north. It doesn't look like Florence has changed very much during the overnights, kind of holding its own there with 50-mile-an-hour winds. The Hurricane Center not forecasting this to strengthen very much. There is some shear that it's going to encounter. You look out to the northwest, there's this upper low that is spinning east of 60 degrees west, and the cloud tops are moving from southwest to northeast. So some of that shear is going to get involved. The opposing side of that will be the fact that you're going to have Francis moving over warmer Atlantic waters as it starts to get west of 40 degrees west, and that's probably going to compensate in the other direction. It should maintain its strength. We'll go into more detail on I'm sorry, I keep saying Francis. We'll go into more detail on Florence as later today when I wake up and I get to look at all the weather models. There's another tropical wave south of the Cabo Verde Islands. We mentioned this last night. You can see it moving to the west. It's not very well organized. It might organize in another couple of days as it gets further to the west. Some of the models seem to be gelling this up a bit. And since the Atlantic does look like it is getting rather active, we might as well go along for the ride and see what happens. Meanwhile, just from the overnight weather models, just want to show you here. I think this is probably a good time to look at the NAM model and see what the NAM did with this. And it doesn't look like it really does very much with it, but this might be an instance where models aren't going to be particularly useful. You can see the turning of the convection that's going on the NAM model. It does close off an isobar here, but it's already late in the game. This is now tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Well, we already have a closed circulation now, so we know that's wrong. I think this might be one of those instances where models are not going to be particularly useful, other than the fact that we can sort of figure out where the track is, and it takes it right into southeastern Louisiana by the time we get to tomorrow night. This system, by the way, for Gordon is moving right along, so it wouldn't be it wouldn't be a big surprise to me if that does wind up coming in faster than forecast. So just want to jump real quick. We'll go to the Hurricane Center, and let's see. Here's Florence, by the way. The reason why I keep saying Francis is I think I was reading one of the someone's comments on the YouTube my video last night talking about Florida and the impact that Gene and Francis had back in the early 2000s, and I guess it's kind of stuck in my head at this point. Here's the Hurricane Center's forecast. Really hasn't really changed very much with landfall. They have a landfall coming in tomorrow night, early Wednesday morning. Tropical storm as a tropical storm, not very far from New Orleans, and the warnings pretty much where they had the watch up is where they put up the warnings. And now, of course, you can see the tropical storm warnings on the Hurricane Center's map. I guess the local forecast offices haven't caught up yet, but it looks like the warnings extend from Miami. I was misspoken earlier, across the Keys and then up the west coast to just probably just south of Naples or Port Charlotte. But that is where we have the tropical storm warnings up. So I stand corrected from earlier. Everything's sort of happening on the fly right now with respect to the upgrade here from the Hurricane Center. They just went out with it a little while ago at around 8:30. So local offices, the local forecast part of the weather offices trying to play catch up and getting the information out. It's Labor Day, making for a tough go for everyone involved. So let me just come back and say hi to you guys real quick. Um, See, you've got a nice crowd on board. K-Dog, you live south of Tampa. Would I get any strong storms and winds? I think it's going to go south of you. If you look at the radar, it's not extending. The northern edge of the rain, at least for now, seems to be well to your south. So I'm thinking probably not. I'm thinking you might get some downpours up that way, but I don't think you're going to get into that solid heavy rain band that's sweeping across Florida. At least from what I see at the moment, at worst you'd probably be on the northern fringe. Um, William Uber right on the bay, water temperature about 80. Sat a lot of fluke. Puts I'm not on the at Mauritius Bay. Sat lot of fluke. Put small. I'm guessing you're catching some small fluke. All right, great. That's awesome. I wonder how many sea robins are in the mix too. On and off rain here in Palm Beach this morning from Mike Montuori. No winds yet. Gloomy day ahead. Yeah, I think wind is not going to be the issue here. I think for the most part, it's going to be more rain than anything else. That's a pretty solid area of rain that is sweeping in from the east. So it is going to mean a pretty gloomy day your way. Isaiah Jacob, yeah, the Euro, as far as Florence is concerned, does have a lot of the ensemble members of the European seem to have a cluster concentrated in the Carolinas. I'm going to talk more about that during the evening live stream because I'll have more time to take a look at it. Daniel Dust, Port St. Lucie, just cloudy and gloomy. Gloomy it'll be. I think you're going to probably miss out on most of the rains. You should be far enough north to be out of that. And Evan Model's been trying to kick Florence into the eastern seaboard. One of the things I've a rule that I follow with regards to threats along the East Coast, but particularly the Northeast, is the fact that you got to have a trough to the west, creating a southerly flow. If you don't have that, it's going to be pretty difficult to bring a storm up the East Coast. Now, that's not to say that you can't get it to go into the southeastern part of the United States, into the Carolinas, because the requirements on the upper air are a bit different. But I'm going to need time to kind of really absorb all of that and get into all the data later today, which I will do. By the way, I did a little sound adjusting. I hope that the audio sounds good. I'm not seeing any complaints, and I don't think I'm over modulating. At least I hope I'm not. Christopher, knowing now that the new storm Gordon is now intensifying, how strong do you think it could get? Yeah, I think it probably could reach. I wouldn't be shocked to see winds when it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. It's not a stretch to go from here to about 60 or 65 miles an hour. There's still time for it to strengthen between now and tomorrow evening. I'd like to see what kind of data gets sampled when the plane is in there. But oftentimes in the past, if you see something that's kind of outperforming, here's a situation where you've got models really not. It's obvious that they're not doing a good job with this because you already have a tropical storm in the mix. So I think this is a sign that maybe this system is going to wind up getting a bit stronger. So I would be a little cautious here going forward. Will it reach hurricane strength? Well, that is, that I don't know. I mean, I guess it's always possible that it could just make it to minimal hurricane strength before landfall. I would tend to lean to the idea that it could certainly strengthen into a strong tropical storm. One thing that squares me is how quickly and unexpectedly Harvey intensified last year in the Gulf, says Ender Destructor. Yes, but just remember, it's two different, the upper air with Harvey and the upper air with this are not exactly the same. I'll also mention, it should also be brought out that, intensity forecasts from the Hurricane Center will tell you this is where they've had their toughest issue. The tracks The tracking forecast, the margin of error in the tracking forecast have continued to shrink over time, and they've gotten very good, but still having a very, very difficult time when it comes to dealing with strength and intensity. And these things have oftentimes intensified fairly rapidly and when you least expect it. So the only thing is there's a big difference between this and Harvey in terms of the upper air. The conditions with Harvey were about as ideal as you could get. And Harvey had more time, by the way, from what I remember. Had a bit more time to get going. The trajectory that it took from when it moved off the Yucatan toward the Texas coast was at, basically moving north-northwest, which gave it much more time over the water. This one, it may not have the same amount of time, but hey, you know what? It's out there. You have to take it seriously while it is out there, obviously, and we'll just wait. Let's see what the reconnaissance aircraft brings back later today. Where do you go to see the Euro ensembles, Isaiah Jacob? You can look at Tropical Tidbits. There's a limited amount of Euro ensembles available there. I basically have to get it from word of mouth from my weather buddies out there. Some of them who have access. You can't subscribe. You can't get paid subscriptions without going broke and subscribe to everything you need to subscribe to look at all this stuff. So you just kind of rely on the kindness of strangers, let's say, in order to get the information. But this is what I was told by one of my close weather buddies as he gets to look at it. And there was a cluster that it showed, a cluster of tracks off the Carolina coast. But again, a lot of that's a long way away, obviously, with regards to Florence. All right, folks, going to cut it short here. Morning live stream. Thanks very much for being here. Really appreciate it. I got website posts on meteorologistjoecioffi.com. I also have them on Patreon, where you can view everything with no issues regarding ads and other things. So if you're interested, you can take a look at my Patreon site, and if you'd like, become a patron. Really appreciate it if you did. Again, please bear in mind, consult your local National Weather Service office or the National Hurricane Center regarding decisions that you might have to make with respect to threats from tropical storms or hurricanes. Any weather model maps that we show you here are not to be used for making decisions. And we're a participant in the Amazon Services Associates Program and in the Ebates Associates Program, which is a way for our channel to earn fees from both Amazon and Ebates and their affiliated sites. Thank you for those of you who've used that. Thank you for those of you who've hit Super Chat along the way. Also, I really appreciate that very much. Okay, folks, take care. We will see you a bit later on.